Hey everybody, this is Jack Hammer from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. With me is Jessie Nayler. This is Thursday night, which means it is time for the Hammer and Nail Show. How you doing tonight, Jessie?
I'm doing fantastic, Jack. Ready for another good episode of Hammer and Nails. And we got football tomorrow, man. We got actual 49er football. I know it's preseason, but I'm still pretty excited about it.
Yeah, for sure. And like Tom over here in the comment section, he says, hi, Jack. Hi, Jessie. 1 month from today, the season starts, faithful. I can't wait.
That's awesome.
It's actually absolutely right. All throughout training camp, I keep saying, there's still a month to go, still over a month to go, still over a month to go. And now it's actually, I can't do that anymore. Now it's going to be less than a month. I'm going to have to start remembering how many days is left.
I love it.
Yeah. And then we also have Peter Mua in there. He says, let's go with some fire emojis. Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time, I think. And we're going to have a good discussion about a couple of different things, just to kind of lay out the topics. We're going to, before we get started for everybody, we're going to talk a little bit about the coverage of camp. Jessie will give us kind of the fan perspective of it. I'm going to give some of my perspective on some of the things that have been going on, some of the things that I've been reading. And then we will do the things to be concerned about from training camp, the things to be encouraged by, and then we'll get into what to look for tomorrow night when the preseason opens against the Green Bay Packers here in Santa Clara at Levi Stadium, at least. We also have a couple other folks join us real quick. Ekim says, hey, guys, want to hit these real quick. And then we have Lucas who says, hey, Jack. Lucas is with us from Austria. And then we've got Jonas here. Jonas, I'm not sure. Probably Jonas.
2:30 a.m.
And he says it's 2:39 a.m. in Norway. So we've got Austria, we got Norway. Somewhere Gav is probably in here from Wales. Just going to be fun. So and then Andrew is here.
Crazy.
He says that Andrew tells us that Jimmy Garoppolo should start. That's going to just no. But Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't even want to be in San Francisco. Okay, so that's I'll let you go first, and then I'll respond or go through my feelings and takes over the last 2.5, 3 weeks of training camp about the coverage of camp, the things that however you're feeling about it. I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah, and I have a lot of questions for you too, because some of you are unique, right? Like some of you are unique to where you're journalists, but you also have a YouTube channel, right, where opinion comes in, and you're even more unique because you're also a fan of the team or have been in the past. And I don't know if that's changed for you in covering the team. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that. But for me, like I feel like coverage is so different depending on who you're listening to. I mean, you've got people in the stands that are trying to cover it from one perspective far away. Then you've got you guys who are up close. You've got the tweeting aspect of it, which is you're trying to get as much out to the fan base as possible while also paying attention to what's going on the field. And so you're going to get different perspectives on how people saw things there. And then you have the article side where the article/YouTube side where you get to go in depth in what you're talking about. And, I guess my biggest thing is like, my frustration from people is when they will tweet something out, but they don't give any perspective, right? Of like, hey, this is what happened. I saw one tweet, and I'm not going to say who it was, but I saw one tweet where they said, wobbly, ugly throw by Trey Lance. That was it. They didn't say if it was complete or incomplete, and come to find out the pass was complete, but they didn't say that, right? And then when you asked them, like, well, was the pass complete? And they're like, their answer was, oh, well, I'm just trying to give as much detail as possible. I'm like, yeah, but you left out the best detail, which is, was it complete or not? So I don't know. It's interesting. And everybody covers it a little bit different. I can't imagine that it's easy. You only get one look at a play and you're trying to remember everything that happened within that play, write it down, tweet it out. Also while watching the next play and getting it all together. So I would be curious to see, like, how do you chart things? Like, how do you even do that? Right. How do you watch the play while also charting things and tweeting things and all that? How does that work for you? And then B, what is the difference and how do you separate the journalistic side, which is, hey, I got to write for Press Democrat, right? And, I've got a YouTube channel, so I've also got to give opinions. Like, or do you separate that? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So as far as to like answer the question, as far as the charting of plays, I do it the same way in training camp that I do during the season. So during the season, just use a regular thing like this, right? This is what I use during the regular season. I have one for the offense, one for the defense. I'm charting all the plays, writing down notes, those kind of things. And so I can't have such a big thing while I'm out there during training camp. So I just have a little thing that I use and flip. Like the other day, I went through 3 pages because they ran so many plays, and I have notes and stuff. And, there's 40 seconds in between a play, usually about 25. You have about 15, 20 seconds to write down some notes. So I've gotten pretty good at kind of writing just little things down every once in a while. I get a little more detailed with it. So that's how I kind of take the notes, from a perspective, like a visual of it. Quite frankly, us as journalists, reporters, whatever you want to call us, those of us that are on the field, we have the worst view of anybody other than the coaches, because the coaches are standing. Kyle Shanahan has the best view because he's standing behind the quarterback, so he's got the best view of everything. John Lynch usually has the second best view because he's doing the same thing on the defensive side, and then you've got the defensive coaches who usually watch from the sidelines. But it's harder to see from the sidelines than if you're up a little bit. I've found myself wandering down to get kind of deep in the defensive side because it gives me a little bit better view of the entire field. And I've been trying to zero in on certain things. You can see the whole field, but you got to kind of, laser in on certain things and kind of pull back as the play unfolds. But, so yeah, the play happens. I'm just pretty much putting down, like, let's say it's Trey Lance and it's a completion to Deebo Samuel, whatever, 5-19 tunnel screen, it looked explosive, good block, whatever, that kind of thing. That's usually what I put. And then at the end of practice, so I do that. The way that the Frontiers run it, they run a series of team offense and defense together, obviously, and then they take a break and they go into special teams. And so during special teams, that's when I'll usually tweet out how the morning went for the quarterback. If there's something else that jumped out, I'll send another tweet about that. And then they come back and they do it again. Usually the second part of practice is when they'll do their move the ball periods and things like that. They get a little bit more intense after. So that then at the end of practice, you get the tweet, which is usually pretty straightforward. It's here's the numbers, and that's it. Every once in a while, there might be a little bit more detail if I think there's something else that needs to be included or that I want to get out there. Otherwise, it's the detail, the context, everything like that that comes in with the writing. I don't view Twitter as journalism, meaning that I need to detail every little thing on Twitter. Twitter is a soundbite of what took place. If you want to know the details, you go to the write-up, you go to the YouTube, you go to those things. My stuff on my YouTube and my write-ups are very similar. They're pretty much the same thing. A couple little things change as far as the order and the way that I'm thinking about it. And usually there's some questions and people I get into the comments, and that's when it gets fun. Like yesterday's, there was a lot of questions. Grant hadn't gone on yet, so my viewership was higher. And so I was getting a bunch of questions. And so it was fun because there was about half an hour of just questions and answers after I'd gone through the report. And that's typically how it goes. So yeah, no, that's the way that I look at it. And then from you mentioned being a fan, those kind of things. And I grew up a 49ers fan. I don't deny that. But one thing that I will say, and I won't lie, I'm not going to tell you that I don't want to see them be successful, because I do want to see them win. But when it comes to what I tweet and what I write, that's not me as a fan. That's me as this is what I'm seeing. And that's partly, I think, why it's not hard for me to be maybe a little harsher with my words in terms of Trey Lance's performance or, Justin School, poor guy. I've been ripping him up and down in my post-practice reports because he just couldn't block anything this week in terms of during one-on-one drills. So, there's the Twitter aspect, and then there's the write-up, and the write-up is much, much more detailed. I don't know how everybody else does it because I don't pay to read anybody.
Yeah.
I know Grant does the good, and I've read him enough. I know how he sets it up. For me, it's just these are the things that stood out when it comes to like the quarterback position in particular. I always make sure that if it's been a bad day for Trey Lance, I make sure that I talk about the good stuff, because there's never a day that goes by that doesn't have some positive. Even on his day that was 4 of 12, there was if you read the write-up that I did, there were positive comments of certain plays that he made that day. So that's the other part. And that's one of the things when I get onto Twitter, there's a few. Here's the thing with Twitter real quick. Like, there's a guy on Twitter who has called me racist ever since I said that I didn't like Justin Fields. And it's continued on to this day, and it keeps happening. It's crazy to me the way that you can take somebody somebody who's saying that a quarterback is struggling, and you take it to that. We'll leave it there. But in terms of like the other stuff, it's like all I keep hearing about is the need for context. And this 49er fans have gotten really interested in context, and they've gotten really interested in context this year in particular. I think I know why, because I'm going to pull this up real quick. This is a tweet from Grant. It's not negative on Grant. This is what we tweeted, because what Grant was tweeting after practice last year is the same thing I was tweeting after practice. Very similar style here. He added a lot more detail in his write-ups. He was doing a great job of it because he was detailing the final, doing the quarterback competition, right? And so he had every throw laid out and everything like that. So these are the tweets that he put out last year. Jimmy Garoppolo, this is after one practice. This was his season. Jimmy Garoppolo, 190, 299, 11 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. That's what he did for the entire thing. Then he has this other one that's 12 days of camp. 11, there's his completions, his percentage, touchdowns, interceptions. Trey Lance is underneath it. That's what I've been doing all year, only about Trey Lance. And the grief that I've gotten for doing this is hilarious to me, because the reason people are getting pissed off about it is because they want Trey Lance to do good. And I get it. And when Trey Lance's numbers are 50%, he's actually up to 55. So after practice 7, he was at 50.5. That's when you and I had that discussion last week. Mm-hmm. He's actually bumped that up to 55, which means he's had a pretty good week in terms of completion percentage. But I just find that to be, I say interesting, because I think it makes the point that people want to hear what they want to hear. And if they're not hearing what they want to hear, they don't like the report.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think for sure, like, I'll just take it from the fan perspective. Like, of course we want to hear things that are good. Well, most of us want to hear good things about Lance. Not all of us, but most of us do. I think we want to know everything that goes into it, right? And there are some people that may not be reporters, like traditional sense reporters or journalists that get down on the field, that have taken to Twitter a little bit differently because maybe they don't write articles, right? And so they've kind of turned Twitter into almost as if they were writing an article, right? And so they are giving a lot of context, okay? And so I think those people naturally have become popular because even if Trey has an off day, they're telling you why, right? But they're doing it right there on Twitter. They don't say, hey, this is the numbers. I also have an article, I have a YouTube channel, because some people may or may not look at those things. They're just looking at your tweet and going, oh, well, whatever. He doesn't like Trey Lance or whatever, right?
Sure.
When I can go to this person and just read their tweets and get all the context. Okay. So I think there's that group of people that may not watch YouTube, may not read articles, and they just go to Twitter for all the answers. And because of that, they really enjoy the context being laid out in all the tweets, which is fair. I mean, I understand that. Like, if that's your only source of information, I think, and this is hard to do. So this is me trying to give some advice, but also knowing that I don't know if I would follow this advice because I like to respond to people. But I would either, when I tweet the numbers, if I'm just going to leave the numbers, which is fair to do, I would say something along the lines of, hey, more details, details as to how these throws broke down in my article. Or if somebody gets mad at me, that's how I'd respond to them. Hey, I've got a lot of context in my article. Here's the link. Like, I would just use it as every opportunity to plug my article or plug my YouTube channel, and try not to get caught up in the emotion of people's frustrations with the way that you're reporting, because it is just Twitter and you don't look at it as, hey, I'm a reporter on Twitter. Because I think what happens is you end up getting these pissing matches with people, and you're like, well, there was no context for Jimmy G. Well, now all of a sudden, now they hate Jack Moore because they're like, well, I knew you hated Trey Lance. There's my confirmation right there. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard to do that, but like, I think that's the only way that you can handle it. I don't know how else to handle that situation. I really don't.
No, and the thing here is like, so like, there's certain writers who are on Twitter that block a lot of people. And so that's part of the reason why they do it, is because they don't want to get into the pissing matches. They don't want to deal with some of the bullshit and the constant stuff. I don't block people because I want to see the bullshit, not because not because it's good for me, not because it makes me be better, but because I want to know who's saying what, especially if I'm tagged into it. I don't go search my name up, but I see what comes. If it comes through with a.
Oh, if you're tagged, it's gonna pop up in your stuff. Yeah.
Right, and I think there's a couple of things, and I'm gonna just kind of stay on this. Is that two things I'm gonna hit on really quick. One, this is a frustration, something that was frustrating to me over the last few weeks. There was a person on the field who I talked to about what was going on that day, and I made the comment about, put this in my article too, so it's not like I just said it on the sidelines and I didn't stand behind it with what I wrote. And I said, I don't know if this offense right now is any better with the quarterback they have than who they had last year. And I made that comment to him, and he nodded and agreed with me, and then said some stuff. A few days later, I read an article that takes everything that happened in a practice, not this one in particular, but in a practice, and twists it into a positive. So if you're like willing to say something when you're talking to somebody, put that shit in your article. Don't keep trying to spin everything as a positive. I heard a conversation the other day about how Trey Lance on Sunday, his 4 of 12 day, which was bad. People have tried to spin that as if it wasn't as bad as it was. So a couple of things about that. I took, again, people get upset because you say that it was a bad practice. Everybody wants to try to find the positives in it. Like I said, I already found a couple positives in my article. But really quick, the thing about that day is I heard somebody say that there was a play from Trey Lance where he threw an interception to Fred Warner. If that play would have been a sack, that interception shouldn't have counted. And here's what Kyle Shanahan had to say when I asked him about Trey Lance, because in particular, actually, this is the response to the question from Eric Branch, because he asked, the last practice, it looked like there were some accuracy issues, but when you're reviewing that practice, what stuck out as far as, okay, there's some room for growth there? The turnover that he made to Fred, and then he also talks about the one that Nate Sudfeld made. Those were two that bothered me the most. You're going to be off on some throws, but you can still win games when you're off on throws. You can't win games when you turn the ball over, and it was mainly the turnovers. So here's the head coach telling you exactly what he thought of a play on Sunday, and you have a fan person who was reporting telling you that it was a sack. That's the difference between what I'm doing and what some other people are reporting on. I also asked the question of Kyle Shanahan on Tuesday. This is what I asked him, because I was trying to get a positive response about Trey Lance. Okay. I said, through the first 10 days of camp, how has Trey Lance met or exceeded your expectations for coming into this year? And his response was, I think it's kind of gone how I went, how you do with every quarterback. I think he's had some really good days. I think he's had a couple rough days. I thought he had a rough day his last practice, which was on Sunday. it's going to be good to see how he bounces back today, which was Tuesday, which he bounced back brilliantly. But I've been real pleased with Trey and real pleased with all three of them. So I guess the thing that I'm saying there is I asked the head coach what the quarterback has done well. And his response, he's had some good days. He's had some bad days. Sunday, which was his last practice, it was a bad day. I don't know what else we're supposed to say that's not going to get people upset. But that's right there exactly what's happened. And it's interesting me to see. I've said it a number of times on my own stream, but there are a number of people who it seems like are trying to carry the water of Trey Lance because they don't want to be dealing with bullshit from fans. And I'll just leave it at that.
I think
I'm not even really speaking about reporters. You got to remember, there's a lot of fans that are people that are fans that are bloggers. I'm a blogger too, so I'm not trying to put anybody down. I'm not like trying to make it like I'm a big journalist, or I'm just a guy with only 6,000 followers, a small YouTube channel, and whatever. But I'm extremely passionate about what I'm doing, and I also don't feel like I don't feel like the people that read my stuff, and I don't feel like they're people who watch my stuff deserve for me to try to sugarcoat it to them. I tell them what happens, and I've told you this too, Jesse. I would rather tell you that Trey Lance sucked on this play than tell you, well, it wasn't that bad. It was okay. I would rather tell you he sucked on that play because you know what? When he does good 5 plays later, I'm telling you the same thing. And it's like, look how much better that is. Look at how much he improved. This play sucked. That play was great. Awesome. He made some improvement there. And this goes back to his first start against Houston, or his second start against Houston as well. Doing the film breakdown, it's like, this is a bad play. It turns out okay, but this isn't really a good play. And it's like later on, it's like, look how much better he's playing. So it's like, it's okay to say that he's bad here, and it's okay that he's here. You know what I mean? At least that's how I see it. Give him criticism and talk about Trey Lance the same way you would talk about any other quarterback. If you're going to write, if you don't feel like Jimmy Garoppolo was good, cool. But Trey Lance is doing a lot of the same things that we saw from Jimmy Garoppolo. He's throwing interceptions left and right to linebackers and guys over the middle of the field. Is he better than Jimmy Garoppolo, like at throwing the ball down the field? Absolutely. Absolutely. He is much better at taking shots down the field. And I need to shut up because I'm on a soapbox.
Yeah, no, listen. Like I know that I've heard Grant recap this situation back when Pettis was on the team. And a lot of people were talking about Pettis and how good he looked. And Grant's like, I don't think this guy looked very good. And so I was honest with that assessment, right? I was honest with the fact that, Pettis didn't look good. And then come to find out, Pettis wasn't a very good player, right? And he was, quote unquote, ahead of the curve. But other people were seeing it that same way. They just weren't willing to report it because they didn't want to be the bad guy, right? And so I appreciate anybody who's willing to be honest, even if it is going against the curve. I want to hear what's going on. I think where fans have a hard time separating is if they think everybody speaks in absolutes. You're not saying that because he had a bad practice or a bad throw that he can never recover or be better. Or that if he's not as good now as Jimmy or what I don't know, whatever you said earlier, or he's even with Jimmy or whatever. It doesn't mean that in 2 weeks he can't be better, right? Like you're not speaking in absolutes. You're just speaking in that moment. And, I had somebody get upset at me. First of all, I'm not a journalist. Like try to make that very clear to people. I am not a journalist. I opine. I give my opinion. And I do like to be honest with that opinion. Now people are like, somebody said, well, you're caping way too hard for Trey Lance right now. This is not the Jessie that I'm used to. And I said, first of all, I'm not at training camp. So all I can do is go off of the reports. That's all I can do. But more importantly, I'm going off of the highlights that I'm seeing. And I know that those are the best plays from Trey Lance. But what I'm seeing is, regardless of what the stats are, I do see him going through progressions. I do see a little bit of a prettier ball. I do see he's putting touch on some passes, which I did not see from him last year. Now, much like you, even though I'm a big Trey Lance guy, I frequently have to bring this up where I pull up my tweet from the Texans game, the first half, where I said, this is why you don't box score scout. Because 10 for 13 sounds really good. Trey Lance is not playing well right now. That came from my mouth. A Trey Lance stan, right? I will be honest when I can see it. Right now, I cannot see it. So I'm at the mercy of all of you guys. You know what I mean?
No, I get it. And we're going to, you're going to see some glimpses of it tomorrow because I do think Trey Lance is going to play a little bit. And there's going to be some other things. I'm going to say like really quick because this guy was in our comment section. So I want to make sure that I throw this out. But excuse me. I almost, the other day I was doing a live stream with somebody. I think it might have been when I was on with Rohan, and I let out the biggest belch right in the middle, like starting to say something. It was funny. But yeah, but Rohan's in our comment section. Rohan Chakravarthi. Rohan, see, notice that I was actually practicing your name in my car yesterday driving to the stadium for practice. Rohan Chakravarthi, because I made a mistake. I didn't say his name at one point, and then he joked with me back, and I felt bad because names are difficult sometimes, but you know what, your name is important. And Rohan and I had a really good show together a couple of days ago, and it was a lot of fun because I think he's maybe he's a little bit more positive than I am, but at the same time, it was a fun conversation because he'd also been there. So when we're talking about it, it's like, "Hey, what did you think about this? What did you see on this?" It was just just an interesting conversation, and we both, I think, sensed some struggles. We both sensed, talking about the positives. It's all not, there's nothing about Trey Lance that says he's gonna suck. So let's make sure that I put that out there for everybody. I don't think that Trey Lance is going to suck. And there's a comment in here that I'm going to get to be about taking it personal. And I do take it personal to an extent. I take it really personal when people start to tell me that I'm racist. As far as not liking my reporting, that's one thing. You don't have to like what I'm saying. But when people start getting into personal stuff like that, that's when I get frustrated. And James, let's just hit a couple of the super chats, and then I'm going to show a little quick video that kind of goes along again with the struggles of Trey Lance, and everybody's going to love this one because it's already on my YouTube if you've checked it out, if you're or on here. But James Foster says, how about Lombardi? Dude is so pro Lance, seems like he is saving face after last year, even though he was right about Lance and Jimmy a season ago. David does a great job. He's one of the things that that kills me about David, and it's not bad. It's about the way that he's being perceived. Because last year, people hated his guts. They hated the spreadsheet. This year, they love the spreadsheet. This is why, right? He's giving you context. This dude gave you context up the yin-yang last year, and people didn't like it because he kept saying that Jimmy Garoppolo was doing good. I don't read The Athletic. I'm cheap. Like I said, I'm a cheap ass. I don't pay for anybody's stuff. Not that I don't like their work, but I don't have the time, and I don't spend the money on it right now. But I don't, is he trying to save face? I think he's reporting accurately. Again, there are positives about Trey Lance, and we're going to get into some of those in a little bit. There are some real positives about what he's doing. There's some real negatives about what he's doing. And then we have 49ers First Takes. Thank you very much, Aaron, for yours. Donation. James, thanks for yours as well. He says, just checking in to see if you two are behaving because you're both my homies. Yeah, we're behaving. I'm not going to fight Jessie. Have you seen what Jessie does against the bag? Have you seen the way Jessie punches that bag in his garage? He would kill me. I'm not going to get into a fight with Jessie. I might tell him that I don't like him, but I'm not going to get into a fight with him because I'm not going to win that fight. Thank you very much, Aaron. I really appreciate that as well. And then Mark says, Jack, with all due respect, you're taking this too personal. We come to you to get your opinion on experiences we cannot experience. You too, Jessie. No, and Mark, I really appreciate that because that's what you're coming for, is to get my opinion or to get the view of what happened that day. And even if you don't like it, that you understand kind of what's going on. And if you're consuming my content here and you're consuming it on at the Press Democrat, hopefully you're enjoying it, and hopefully you're understanding what I'm saying from a context standpoint. Like everything is, I'm focusing so much on Trey Lance because that's what everybody gets fired up about. But every day there is a positive, and there are the positives of Trey Lance, and there are the not so positive negatives, or whatever you want to call it, of Trey Lance's day. And that so be it. We'll go from there.
I think also this is something that I try to talk about a lot, and I'm sure you've heard me say it if you consume any of my content, is players are humans, right? Like they have good days and bad days like all of us. Well, we're no different just because we're on this side of the screen. And I can tell you, and I'm sure Jack's gotten some of the same stuff. I get some really, really disrespectful DMs. I'll tell you that right now. Like things that if somebody said it to my face, it would be instant on site. Like I'm just being clear about that, right? But people get away with it because they're on the other side of the screen and they don't have a profile picture and they, you know what I mean? But they say some real hurtful, disrespectful things. And so I think it is hard, you know, and it does come with the territory. I understand that. But like at least the way that I handle it is when I'm here on YouTube, I try to be as professional as possible. You won't hear me really swear or anything like that. But if I'm on Twitter and I'm getting treated a certain way, I'm going to give you the same energy that you give me. If you give me positive energy, I'm nothing but thankful. If you give me negative energy, I have no problem giving it right back. And I don't know anybody anything. That's just who I am. I'm just being me. So
that's why our Twitter is so fun, because you say something and I'm an asshole to you. Excuse my language. And then you usually put. I was really surprised that you didn't say anything back to me today, because you know that's you know.
That's usually we have good back and forth there.
But like the thing on that is like I do feel that way. I do feel like you're super pumping them up, and I feel like when there's criticism, you're really defensive on it. Now, you know that's okay. You're a fan. You're a Trey Lance fan. You make no apologies about it, so I can understand that. I'm just telling you like why I responded in the way I responded, because I don't really care like about certain things that are happening because that was the play where you're talking about, you know, have we seen Jimmy Garoppolo make the throw like whatever we saw to George Kittle the other day in practice yesterday and things like that, you know. And the other thing is, like, I've talked about this a bit and I'm going to change it still on Trey Lance, but I know that I'm not the only one who has noticed the accuracy issues. And can Trey Lance be accurate? Of course. Every quarterback has times that they're accurate, right? But they don't have, like, to be a really good NFL quarterback, the top guys are consistently accurate, right? It's consistent. And it just isn't there with Trey Lance right now. And I know that he pushes the ball down the field, but he's also errant on the throws underneath. And it's not just like yesterday. He missed Juwan Jennings on one. He missed, I think it was Brandon Ayuk. I don't remember who's in front of me, but the one on Brandon Ayuk that I thought was a bad throw was actually, I was watching the highlight clip today, was actually tipped by, I think it was going to be behind him, but Talanoa Hufanga tipped it. But anyway, I mean, my thoughts as far as the accuracy issues, I spent a little bit of time talking to Brent Coleman, I think is the name.
Yeah, Brett Coleman or Colorman or whatever. Yeah.
Brett, yeah. And he's here on YouTube. He has his own channel. I bumped into him after the press conference on Tuesday. And then yesterday, he just happened to come over and stand next to me while we were watching. And we were kind of talking about different things. He was talking to me more than I was talking to him. I was kind of being rude, but then every once in a while, you know, I'd say something to him. And it was a fun conversation. It was kind of, he knows a lot about football, and it's fun to hear him talk because he's like asking very detailed questions to the players and stuff. So I know what he's talking about. And he talked about the accuracy issues with Trey Lance, and there's definitely going to be some ups and downs. We got to be ready for that. I'm going to pull up a video really quick that I put on YouTube today, and I'm going to play it real quick. This is, I have it on my channel. You're going to find the Trey light. Ooh, like that one. Like that?
Trey light.
We're not look at that. I took we have I heard Grant yesterday call them the tray ups or something like that.
Yeah.
The layups, something like that. And so look at, I just said the tray light. So look at that. We got, man, Jack comes around with some good ones. So here is Trey Lance yesterday. I've talked to you before about some of the issues that I've seen with him wearing up. This is during individual drill, throwing to stationary targets on the move with Trey Lance. And it's just two plays. You get some ACDC in here as well, which I should probably mute because they're going to.
Yeah, I would mute that so you don't want to get copyright for that.
Yeah, so I'll have to. So here's the throw to Kyle Juszczyk, who was standing there when the play started. and the ball sails out of bounds. And, let's go back to the first one. So he's rolling. He's going to roll out to his right. There's a ball boy that's standing out there, and he's got to hit him in the flat. The ball boy's just standing there like this, right? Just standing there. He's not, and now he's chasing the ball because that's how poorly thrown the ball was. He gets his next rep and he throws it to Kyle Juszczyk. Again, this is an out route, which he struggled with throughout practice into the ground. Now, in Trey Lance's defense, the other guy came up behind him and did the same thing, but I don't really care if the backup quarterback does it. It's the starter that you're worried about, right? So my only reason for showing that is because, again, I want to show the positive. I want to show the negative. I want to show you guys the full picture. And you've been hearing, I know that I'm not the only guy who's been, that's not even right. I know I'm not the only reporter who's been out there who's talked about Trey Lance having accuracy issues. And I just think that I wanted to show it to you, just because I think it's valuable. And I was going to put it on Twitter. I thought about it, and I didn't because, quite frankly, I didn't have the time to deal with the flame war today.
Yeah, I mean that's but that's you're seeing everything, right? And so you're trying to give. Man, my throat is really scratchy right now. But you're seeing everything, and you're trying to give a perspective of everything you're seeing. Most people aren't reporting on those types of things, right? In fact, probably nobody is. They're waiting until everybody's on the field or what have you. But when you look at a day, you're looking at every single thing all encompassing and giving your thoughts. But nobody's reporting about that, or nobody's really seeing that other than the people that are there. And so I think it does give some context into what you're seeing and what you're saying. I think it's fair to show.
Yeah. And, I didn't put it on Twitter because I already know, based on the response, YouTube usually doesn't, it goes back and forth. But today, that was quite interesting on the YouTube channel. If I'd put that on Twitter, it would have been even, maybe I'll grow some cojones tonight and put it on Twitter for everybody else to see. I don't know. But
just mute the conversation when you do it. You don't have to get any of the responses.
That's what I should do. I should go like Daniel Kelly, right? And make it so you can't respond to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
No, not even that. Just leave it on and you can mute the conversation so people can go crazy and you don't have no idea what the hell they're saying.
Real quick, James Foster had some emojis there. He was, looks like peace and love. Peace and love. I think that's what he was trying to say there. And then we have my egotistic aura. Getting rid of Jimmy Garoppolo will bite us hard. I don't know about that. I don't really think it's going to bite us hard. There's a lot of things that Trey Lance does well. There's some things that he struggles with. He's moved the ball much better in the last few practices, and he does a really good job of it with in the 2-minute drills. Oof, he's been really good in those 2-minute situations.
Well, I remember that was one of the things that we talked about last week is you're like, hey, we haven't seen it yet, but I'm worried about how he's going to move the ball between the 20s. And it seemed like the very next practice, you actually got to see it. And you said, yeah, he did really good today. Like, that was impressive, right? I think it was the first time that they had done it and they had scored like as time expired or whatever it was. So,
yeah, they moved the ball pretty good, like on one of the possessions. It's been interesting. He's been very good in the two-minute drill situations they've put him in. There was one where they were down 4 with 1:25. He took him down the field 65 yards. The only mistake was a high throw to Jermichael Hasty, which wasn't that big of a deal because it stopped the clock. It wasn't really a bad. It was, whatever. It wasn't significant to the outcome of the possession because they went right down the field and scored a touchdown. That was a really nice one where he's moving to his left and throws back to the right to Raymond McLeod. And then the other day, a couple days ago, they did a move the ball again. It was 2 minutes and 30 seconds left to go, up 13-10, and they drove right down the field and scored a touchdown on that one too. So that there were some good things there. That and there was there's been some mistakes here and there, but the fact that Sam Womack has broken up 2 of his passes in the end zone on third or fourth down, whatever, to end the drive. That's a negative for the 49ers offense, but that's a heck of a positive for a rookie has made that play 2 days in a row. So 2 practices in a row because he did it to Jennings on the goal line. He did it one day on an out. He did it the next day on the goal line on an in route. So it's a negative for Trey Lance. It wasn't his fault. He put the ball where it was supposed to be. Just a really good play by the defender both times. So that kind of leads us into the biggest concern from camp. What is your biggest concern as we exit training camp. Well, not even we're not exiting training camp. We're only 12 weeks. We still got another month to go.
Yeah. But from what we've heard so far, I would say for me, it's I mean, just off of everything I'm hearing, is probably the drops, right? This was because this is something that we saw last year. Like drops, regardless of the quarterback, was an issue. I mean, Deebo Samuel had a ton of drops last year. Ayuk had his issues off and on with some drops. I'll, what was it against the Packers? Remember when Jimmy threw a nice pass over the middle to Kittle and he dropped that one on the very first drive? I think it was the first drive. Kind of set the tone for how the offense started to struggle after that. Drops have been a bit of a bugaboo for this team, and we saw that in actual games last year. And then it's starting again in camp this year. And so for me, that's something that I would love to see tightened up. I mean, Trey Lance is going to go through his ups and downs for sure. And I know that all quarterbacks deal with drops, but the 49ers were near the top of the league in drops last year. And they need to do everything that they can, meaning the wide receivers, to help out their young quarterback. Because if he starts to get some rhythm and all of a sudden a drop or two comes and kills a drive, how long does it take for him to get back in a rhythm, right? And so those are the things that I'm concerned about. So I would say drops. I would love to see that get cleaned up.
Yeah, no, that's the drops is definitely a piece of it. I think for me, my biggest concern right now during camp is that is the injuries that they've sustained to Tarvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley. I don't know the severity of them. It's enough that they're going to keep Mosley out, and then to the point where he might practice next week. Ward is going to be out for the next couple of weeks. So that's concerning to me, because if those two aren't playing, we're right back to the same 49ers defense that they had last year in terms of you're going to have a really good middle, but your edges are going to be weak. And so that's an issue for me that I think could come to bite them if those two guys don't stay healthy or aren't healthy come September 11th in Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully Verrett could play by then if that's the case. I'll try to put a positive spin on that, although that is certainly a concern. Injuries are always a concern. I'll say the positive spin is if those guys are going to be back on time, which it does sound like they should be. If they are going to be back on time, there's a real logjam at those other like backup corner positions. And I think over the next couple of weeks with those guys not there, we and the coaches are going to get a real crystal clear look at who should and who should not make this team. And I think it'll be interesting to see, because a guy like Ambry Thomas, who's struggling right now, if that continues and he clearly doesn't deserve to make the team, are they willing to make a tough decision like that and give up on a third-round draft pick because he's not good enough to be on this team, right? And so I'm interested to see how kind of some of those things play out as those guys are resting and coming back from injury.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think, Kadar Holman is somebody that seems like they really like, because they keep sticking him out there with the starters. And then it's Ambry Thomas and Deommodore Lenoir kind of taking, spots at that other side. So that's the concern for me. It sounds like it's one for you as well. Was there anything else that you want to hit on here before we move on to the positives?
Yeah, I would say the continuity of the offensive line, it still sounds like they're trying to figure out for sure who the center is going to be, making some moves. You've got McGlinchey in and out of the lineup because he's trying to recover from his surgery. And you've got Trent Williams, who's a veteran, so he's in and out of the lineup. And when you're constantly rotating the center, it's tough. I mean, I've been worried about the offensive line continuity really all off season, and the fact that they keep making changes and players are in and out, it doesn't seem like that's slowing down. And so I would say the continuity of the offensive line is another thing that I'd be worried about. Jack, you're muted. You're muted.
Especially, that's a good one, because especially at the center position, because that's the guy that's making all the calls for the line here, setting all the everything. And that's definitely been the case. They've been doing a lot of rotation there. Everywhere else is relatively set. I mean, they're I think part of what they're doing right now, because they're not just doing it along the offensive line, they're doing it other places as well, where they're rotating guys in to get they're trying to get so many guys like reps with the starters. They're trying to just get everybody a feel for playing with everybody, because you see it at times in the secondary, you see it at times at linebacker. I get the understanding, I get where you're going though, because the offensive line, it's extremely important. The center position is, I think, the only spot that's up for grabs on the offensive line. I think the other four are pretty well set.
Yeah, for sure.
Aaron Banks and Jordan Spencer Burford. I really like Spencer Burford, but I think both those guys, you see good. You watch them. If you just focused on them throughout practice, you're going to see some good. You're going to see some bad. But they do enough good, especially with the help that they get from McGlinchey and Williams. They've gotten better, and we've seen them hold up better in pass protection over the last week. So
absolutely, it's
been getting better. I don't have any other more, like, as far as the other concerns, I don't know if I really have any other. I think, you can see that at nickel corner, it's pretty much down to Sam Womack and Darquez Denard there. And defensive line, I think, is pretty well set. I think that maybe if you're looking at for another thing to be concerned about is Eric Armstead, but he's supposed to be coming back. And Javon Kinlaw, he's had a much busier camp already than he did last year.
Yeah, absolutely. The defense is, barring those injuries, defense is going to be nasty. Like, that's one thing that we can certainly look forward to for sure. Yeah,
no, it's going to be fun. And let's get over to the positive real quick. Let's hit on next. I do want to get to what to look forward to for Green Bay. What are some reasons to be encouraged for this week or through camp to this point?
Yeah, through camp, I would say just some of the depth on the team. Overall, we know that they've got it on the defensive line. Secondary, it sounds like it exists. Offensive line, although we don't know who the starters are. Let's say Brunskill is not a starter. That's a heck of a backup, in my opinion, that you could bring in at center or either guard position if need be. Sounds like some of these other kids are showing out pretty good at tackle, so you've got some guys there. The running back position is extremely deep. The wide receiver room's gotten pretty deep. Just the depth overall on this team. I think they've got really good depth. And depth usually means, even though they went out and signed some guys, and we do expect to improve special teams, but good depth usually means good special team play as well. And so that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, the depth on this team is definitely a big positive. And I don't know if either of these guys are going to make the team, but I do think that for me, two guys that have made a lot of catches, part of it's because George Kittle doesn't practice every day, but Troy Fumagalli and what's the other one? Number 47, Tyler Kroft. Tyler Kroft and Troy Fumagalli, those guys make a lot of catches. They've made some really nice catches here and there. Fumagalli had one the other day in the end zone. It was really nice. It was as good as the one that I saw from Brandon Ayuk along the back line, reaching over, catching it, and getting his feet down and able to stay in bounds. And Kroft has done a nice job as well. I don't know how that tight end room is going to shake out. It seems like I think there's going to be one new face, because we haven't seen the one guy. He hasn't been there at practice at all year so far during training camp, and it seems like maybe there's going to be a little change at the tight end spot early on. We'll see. But the depth even there has been good. I really like Trey Sermon. You're talking about the running back room. I think Trey Sermon's been he looks better than he did last year. So that running back right now, all the running backs are healthy, so that also helps him out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Trey Sermon's a guy that, I know it was such a small sample size, and a lot of people were like, you're really taking the smallest sample size here, but I could not remove the second half against Seattle out of my mind, which is the time that he got to pair up with Trey Lance and just how good he looked in that second half. And I'm like, man, if he's meant to play with Trey Lance, it sure did show in that small sample size. And if he can figure out how to stay on the field and just be a true professional, I think we could have something here in Sermon. And so I'm glad to hear that he's having a pretty good camp, because I'm really rooting for Trey Sermon.
Yeah, same here. I am too. I think he's going to be, he made some really nice runs yesterday. He had a really nice touchdown run that showed up in the highlight clips and stuff like that. But he had did a couple other things well too. So a lot of positives. There are a lot of positives, and even the Trey Lance stuff. If you want to be positive and be encouraged by Trey Lance, if you want to be discouraged by Trey Lance, you talk about some of the accuracy issues. If you want to be encouraged about what you've seen, it's what he's done in the move the ball periods, especially in the 2-minute drill situations. He just seems like he just flows better. Like he stops thinking about it and those types of things. So he's looked good there. Yesterday he had a really nice ball. He did a couple nice things. There was the nice, everybody talks about the completion to Kittle. That was all right. But it's just a basic, simple ass play action bootleg to your left, hit Kyle Juszczyk and let him run for 15 yards. There was one where they brought pressure and he stands in there. It's just a flick of the wrist over the top of offensive line to Trey Sermon, who takes off for 28, 30 yards on the right side. So, there's plays like that. There are the plays where it's like that should have been a completion. But at the end of the day, I think when we see him in games, when we get to September 11th, I think what I said all off season is he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. That's what, I never said he was going to be great. I never said he was going to be the best. Never said he was going to be a top 10 quarterback, but I said he's going to be fine. What I mean by fine is he's going to give you enough plays with his arms to help you win games. And when he doesn't give it with his arm, he's going to make up with his legs. And I think people are finally the people that are watching practice, are finally starting to get the fact that Trey Lance doesn't want to run. He's not a runner. He is a quarterback, and that's what he runs the ball when he's asked to run it. But when he's asked to drop back or to throw the ball, he wants to throw the ball. He doesn't want to take off just scrambling. 99.5% of the time, he's going to hit there. He's going to wait to throw it, and he's going to give it all he has to throw it before he takes off. And that's when he's at his best, quite frankly, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about that for a year plus. Like me and you've been seeing that on tape. Called this guy a true quarterback. People didn't want to believe it because he had a lot of rushing yards in college, but he is. Yes, he can be dynamic with his legs, but as you're waiting for all young quarterbacks, most young quarterbacks are going to struggle, right? But when you have that extra element of mobility, whether you use it to gain rushing yards or just to buy yourself time, that allows, while you're processing, for plays to break down and wide receivers end up wide open, right? And he's good enough to see those and make those plays. So while he's starting, trying to get used to the speed and just figuring out who he is as a player, that's one thing he has to where, somebody that's not going to be as mobile, let's say a Mac Jones or what have you, doesn't have that they can rely on. They have to be perfect with their arm. And fortunately, Trey Lance doesn't have to be that right away. Now, eventually, to be a long-term good quarterback in this league, he's going to have to really, really be good there. But early on, as he's ramping up, he does have that ability to make plays with his legs, whether that's approaching the line of scrimmage and looking downfield or actually taking off and running. And I do expect to see a lot of that mobility on full display this season.
Yeah, my only concern is that I've seen them run him between the tackles quite a bit this week, and I don't like that because I don't want to see Nate Sudfeld on the field. Not that I don't like Nate Sudfeld, not that I think he's had a bad camp or anything, but I don't want to see him having to play games because he's not the starter, and that's been the biggest problem for the 49ers for years.
Yep.
Jay Tan wanted to ask real quick, how would you describe Lance's decision-making and timing? I think his decision-making for the most part has been fine. There's been a couple of times where it's been bad. Like one of the things, like when you watch the interceptions, at least, I don't know what the play call is necessarily, but I'm watching the play and just kind of the feel that I get is that there's times when he's just maybe not patient enough in the pocket to like maybe let the guy clear the linebacker. Like instead of letting him clear the linebacker, he's trying to hit him before the linebacker, which is why he's hitting the linebacker in the chest because of where the guy is and he's trying to get in there. That's just kind of where the throw goes. I don't know. It's kind of the feel that I have for it. But the day that he had a really good practice when he was 13 of 17 or whatever the number was on Tuesday, he was very patient and he was hitting guys like in the second window, hitting Ayuk instead of in the middle of the field, one window over, and Ayuk would then catch it and run. And the same thing with Deebo Samuel and stuff. So I don't think the decision making. I think the timing sometimes he's a little too quick. Sometimes if there was any question as far as his timing, it's when he's getting rushed and he's got to get the ball out of his hands really quick. He kind of struggles with that at times.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have a show tomorrow at all, or?
I'm not sure what I'm going to do. We got the game at 5:30, and I'm going to do a post game, but I'm not sure about before what I'm going to do there.
I was just curious what your schedule was tomorrow. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to this last topic because I got to get over and.
I needed to hit this last topic. Can we
got to get a restroom break in?
No, you don't. dude, come on. Seriously. Restroom break?
I know it's overrated. I know.
A restroom break. Give me real quick. Don't go into details. Tell me just real quick. What are you looking for real fast? Give me 2 things that you're looking for tomorrow.
Third string, or not third string, but slot receiver. How does that play out?
Yep.
Is Jennings' job on the line, or is it really still his?
Okay.
And then I would say the cornerbacks, like I talked about earlier. Now that the starters aren't there, I'm just curious to see who looks good and who doesn't, who's struggling and who's playing well when there's actually receivers in front of them. So those are the things I'm looking for. And by the way, I know that Aaron Rodgers won't play. Love may not be the best quarterback, but I would say he's probably one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league. So I assume that those corners are going to be tested for sure.
Yeah, there's that. And then there's the running backs, I think, is a big one that you can get a good glimpse of, is the running backs here. I'm looking to see how the offensive line plays. I don't expect the tackles to play, but we're going to get an idea of the interior of the offensive line. I'm not sure what my 5th one's going to be, but now you know 4 of the 5 things that we need to pay attention to tomorrow during the game. Jessie, I know you've got to run to get ready for your show. I appreciate you putting up with me. I know I went way too long on that first segment, but I had some things I had to get off my chest. I feel a lot better about it now. I'm gonna go.
Hey, Rohan, call into my show. We got to talk.
I'm gonna go kick the dog and strangle my cat now. But no, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in the comment section. You guys have been great. You guys were awesome with with all that in the super chat. Rohan Dracovarthe, make sure you call into this guy's show. Make sure you talk to him a little bit. If you guys just do me a favor real quick, he's got to go. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell notification so when we go live. Beyond that, have a great night, everybody. Thank you, Jessie. Talk to y'all soon. I should be around tomorrow.